a sin, Mona, that I should love you quite so much? Is it a sin, Mona, that I should tremble at your every touch? What do I mean to you? Tell the truth, but let your heart do the speaking. What are you looking for? Tell the truth. Is it something else or someone else you're seeking? Don't lead me on, Mona. No matter what you have in mind, don't lead me on, Mona. My heart is begging you to please be kind. Oh, darling, remember, you're my every thrill. I love
New York City, Times Square, Broadway, the pulse, the heartbeat, the main artery of the theater throughout the world. To millions of young girls throughout America, it's more than a place. It's a symbol, a state of mind, a way of life squeezed into a tiny square-mile pinnacle of light bulbs and people. A shiny, gaudy beacon atop the world of the theater. A beckoning, coaxing Lorelei to the stage struck everywhere. In endless numbers, by every means possible, they flock like moths to the elusive candle of Broadway success. A dream that sometimes does come true. Hello, I'm Johnny Olson, and here at my table, just a few blocks from the carnival dazzle of New York's Times Square, each week I dig into a story of Broadway people, the hard ones that Broadway can't hurt, the soft ones that it pushes around, or the brittle people who are smashed into 1,000 pieces against its hard pavements. Every day, Broadway adds another chapter of tragedy, of drama, comedy, or just plain color to its sometimes glowing, sometimes dingy, almost always exciting history. Tonight, it's the story of Mona Kent. Now, if you read today's newspaper, you know who Mona Kent is and what happened to her. It's a story that should give a moment's pause to every girl who wants to make a career of Broadway. It should, but it probably won't. Seated at my table here this evening, I have Eddie Logan.
Hello, John.
And Jerry Roberts.
Hi, Johnny.
Eddie and Jerry, I understand that you two fellas can tell us something about the early career of Mona Kent. And Eddie, I think you knew her first, didn't you?
Yes, I guess I did, John. But it didn't start with Mona Kent. It started with a girl named Elvira Kowalski.
Yes, it started with Elvira Kowalski and a small farm in Banksville, somewhere in the Middle West. And like always, it started with a dream. And as so often happens, the purveyor of dreams, Santa Claus, the good fairy, the magic genie, managed to take the form of a postman. A simple letter becomes a magic carpet to Baghdad on the Hudson. Of course, doting parents with small savings accounts often supply the fuel for these threadbare carpets. And Elvira's mother and father managed to scrape together enough to get her started towards her big chance in New York. She left for the big street with a parental blessing and a large portion of the family savings, secure in the knowledge that her career was on its way. Elvira's newfound dream was brought up sharply and suddenly by the reality that promises are not always kept, and people are not always honest. And Elvira was out 100 hard-earned farm dollars. Her first thought was a logical one. New York City was no place for a girl alone, especially since she'd never been more than 20 miles from the farm before. A telephone call to tell the folks what happened. 3 days ride on the bus, a few days of I told you so's, and Elvira Kowalski's brief theatrical career would be ended for all time. That did it. Maybe it was the for all time, maybe the I told you so's. But right then, Elvira made up her mind to stay in New York. She'd come a long way to get to Broadway, and now it was only a few blocks more. Through the years, thousands of young girls coming to New York for the first time almost automatically gravitate to Greenwich Village, partly because it's a cheap place to live. Apartments are cheaper, living expenses are lower than anywhere else in the city. But there's more to it than that. There's the excitement of the day-to-day living in the village, the community spirit that makes it a small town in the middle of the city. To some, perhaps, it's the end of the line. To others, it's a beginning. It just depends on which way you're headed at the time. To most outsiders, Washington Square and Greenwich Village are places. To them, Washington Square is a small park, and the village a geographical part of the city of New York. But of course, they're wrong. Greenwich Village is an image, and the square its symbol. The casual visitor sees only the surface, enjoys only the ever-prevailing carnival atmosphere, delights in the sidewalk art with the great bright splashes of color, and the wild, frenzied business of their seemingly unformed patterns. The insiders think differently. They are part of the village, and most of them have one thing in common: their dreams, either of the unborn future or the dead past. Elvira found it easy to let herself slip into this prevailing trance. But for the moment, she found it necessary to obscure her dreams with the miasma of reality. First, she had to find a place to live. Now, like most of us, Elvira started looking for what she wanted without regard to what she could afford. Oh, she liked what she saw, all right, until she saw the price tag. Elvira was getting her first hard lesson in basic Manhattan economics. But somehow, just walking through the streets, watching the people, Elvira was becoming part of Greenwich Village. In spite of the circumstances, being here gave her a sense of comfort, almost of well-being. But she still had to find a place to live. If Elvira had kept her mind on finding an apartment, maybe she could have done better. Oh, she could justify it all right. After all, she was looking at houses. But most of them were private homes, like the one with the gas light over the old cobblestone street, or the one that was half a room wide. Then the gray frame house with the yellow shutters and the kids playing in front. On a tree-shaded street with a big lawn, it could have been the mayor's house in Banksville. But with the newness, the strangeness of everything around her, she could easily put home out of her mind. A couple of times she wanted to stop and look in the shops, but finding a place to live came first. After that, there'd be plenty of time and cooler feet for the hard, hot pavements. Some of the clothes weren't exactly what she'd expected to find in New York, but a friendly animal population made her feel at home. Right now, Elvira was feeling that Greenwich Village wasn't really much different from Banksville. Oh, there were strange-looking buildings and strange-looking signs, and even strange-looking people. But it was a community, and Elvira wanted to become part of it. But every time the spirit moved her, the price stopped her. It was beginning to be a discouraging business. And then she'd stop and watch the dreams go by. A pushcart full of old ones on their way to the junkyard of memories, or fresh, bright new ones set to the rhythmic beat of hope. But for Elvira, hope was waning. Oh, she was beginning to find a few places where she could afford a month's rent, all right, if she gave up eating. But each time she was ready to give up, she'd go back through the streets of the village, get caught up once more on the perpetual carnival, and start out again. Probably Elvira didn't know it then, but she was suffering from an acute attack of village fever. The itinerant artist painting a lovely girl's portrait, the writer, musicians, actresses, the models, dancers, and poets, they all know that someday their dreams will become reality. Sometimes they're right, but Elvira still needed a starting point. And in her case, it meant a place to live. Obviously, this wasn't it. Perhaps a day of apartment hunting there made Elvira of the village. Anyway, like most things of the village, she automatically gravitated to the center of its whirlpool of activity, Washington Square. You know, it's a funny thing how sometimes a brief glance, a casual look between two people, can change the whole course of both of their lives. It does happen. Oh, sure, Elvira managed to concentrate briefly on a couple of wags cavorting for the benefit of two disinterested girls, but her lack of interest matched theirs. Then she watched a group of people try to outsmart a small monkey with no visible signs of success. Finally, she gave up and turned her attention to her newspaper. Now, under the circumstances, the move turned out to be a wise one, as Elvira found an important ad she'd missed. At least then it seemed important to Elvira. Somewhat later, 4 other persons would find that ad was even more important to them. But its immediate effect was to set Elvira in motion. And in a small chain reaction, Eddie Logan took off after her. Must have been something to attract your attention so quickly.
No. It wasn't that. It was... I didn't look at her as a real person, just sort of a moving object. I liked the way she moved.
Well, what about her roommate? You know, the girl who advertised to share the apartment. Did both of you fellas know her?
Oh, yeah, we knew her. But I guess Eddie knew her, or rather knows her better. What about it, Eddie?
Yeah, I guess it did turn out that way. But in the beginning, John, I didn't know Janice at all.
And thus ended Elvira Kowalski's first day in New York. Only 1 more mile to Times Square. But the distance from Greenwich Village to Times Square isn't usually measured in miles, or even in blocks. It's measured in time. And Elvira Kowalski still had a long way to go. In 1 day, she had managed to become part of Greenwich Village. She'd learned already to feel its color, excitement, its music, its closeness to the arts, and its own special arts. Tomorrow, she would start out to become part of Broadway. But you didn't stop her then and explain that you wanted to paint her, Eddie?
No, I guess I could have, but I didn't. I just followed her around and kept out of sight. Then I'd go home at night and try to put down on paper what I'd seen that day.
But you could have offered her a job as a model. She needed the work, didn't she?
Well, sure she needed the work. All I could have offered her then was the job, not the pay.
And this went on for 2 whole weeks. Now, what was she doing all this time?
Looking for work. In the theater at first, and then anywhere.
But the day Eddie finally met Elvira, she still didn't have a job. It was easy to see that she was pretty discouraged, but she still wasn't giving up. The breaking point, however, was getting closer. Maybe seeing Eddie across the park playing chess took her mind off herself for a while. Maybe she was thinking of all the cold winter nights that she'd spent playing chess with her father. Or maybe she was thinking of that first day she'd seen Eddie in the park. Anyway, she got up and went over. When she got there, Eddie tried half-heartedly to ignore her, but it didn't work. Elvira had at least 3 things going for her. In the first place, she had no intention of being ignored. In the second place, she was a better chess player than Eddie. And in the third place, Eddie hadn't the slightest intention of ignoring her. And that's just the way it worked out. Of course, Elvira could have called a cop if she wanted to, but she didn't.
Not bad, you'll do.
I'll do? What do you mean I'll do?
Nice face, good figure. I'm gonna paint you every conceivable way till I get the one that's just right.
Oh, no, you won't. I'm an actress. I'm not a model.
Well, don't worry about it. We'll show. I've been watching you. The way you look, the way you walk. There's kind of a melody to your mind, so we'll use it. Huh? Now then, take off your clothes. What's the matter?
Who are you?
Well, I'm Eddie Logan. I'm a painter. Now can we get to work?
I'm Elvira Kowalski.
That's nice. Now get undressed. You know, kid, it's hard finding a body like yours. Well-formed, beautifully proportioned, yet with a sense of movement, even in repose. That's what I meant about melody. Let's see, where am I gonna put you? Hey, you haven't even moved, and that light's going fast.
I can't.
Well, take it easy, kid. I'm sorry. I didn't know
You didn't know what?
that you were so inexperienced. Somehow I thought you were a serious actress.
I am. Just because I won't take my clothes off, what's that got to do with acting?
Everything you do has to do with acting. Look, I don't have time to try to sell you a bill of goods. But if you are an actress, you'd better start being one.
And you think the posing for you that way means that I'm going to be an actress?
Well, it would help. An actress has to use everything she has, even her body, to achieve the theatrical end.
And you think that ripping my clothes off every time I'm asked to is going to help achieve this theatrical end?
But maybe you have talent, I don't know, because I can't see it. Maybe you have brains, I don't know that either. But I know, and everybody who looks at you knows that you have a body, because it's there for them to see. Let's face it, it's an asset, so use it like one.
Yes, but I can't just go on. I am an actress. I don't want to be just a body.
Baby, a beautiful body's nothing to be ashamed of. You better start using it while you still have it. Before you're a mess. Let's face it. Right now, you're at the bottom of the heap. And you're trying to get to the top of one of the toughest rackets in the world. Your body is a commodity. And you have to use every means at your disposal to attract attention.
But I just can't. Well, anyway, it doesn't make any difference because first I've got to find a job. Any job.
Well, we better find you one. What can you do beside act?
Nothing.
Well, you can't look beautiful. Maybe we could put it someplace where it'll do some good. Do you think you could manage a cigarette and hat check concession?
I don't know. I've never tried it.
Come on. Come on, this job ought to be good for your morale, your bankroll, and your career. If you use it right.
Well, Jerry, you haven't had much to say lately. Certainly you had some effect on Elvira Kowalski, didn't you?
Oh, I guess so, but there were a few others before I got into the act.
Such as,
Well, Janice for one. But I think that job, the one Eddie got her that day, wound up having the biggest effect.
that job? I didn't think that was even connected with the theater.
Well, it wasn't, John, but it put her where the whole theater world could fall right over her.
About all Elvira could get out of Eddie was that she was about to move into the nightclub circuit. For the moment, Elvira was on top of the world. She could dance a little and sing a little less. But her mind began to conjure up all the night spots that had taken unknowns like her and made them into stars almost overnight.
Scotch, Sam, on the rocks. So, and some cigarettes, please.
Certainly, Mr. Gregory. Elvira, cigarettes for Mr. Gregory.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Gregory.
It's all right, Elvira. My fault. How are things tonight?
Oh, a little slow so far.
You like it here, Elvira?
It's a job, and I have to make a living.
I suppose, like all of them, you want to be an actress, huh?
Mr. Gregory, I'm going to be an actress.
Are you now? With a name like Elvira Kowalski?
Well, why not? That's my name. Why shouldn't I use it?
Elvira, there are many factors in this business that go towards making a success, but a name like Elvira Kowalski isn't one of them. Why not change it?
Sure, just like that? Change it to what?
I'll think about it. But someday I'll give you a brand new name, okay?
Okay, Mr. Gregory. But it's not going to do any good. At least not until some producer wants to know my name.
Perhaps you're right. Well, maybe we can help there, too. That's my Long Island place. I think you should come for the weekend.
Mr. Gregory, I couldn't.
Now, don't worry, Elvira. It'll be a full house, and a few of them will be producers. And I think it just might do you some good.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory.
Oh, Elvira, don't forget. Let's try to get that name changed by then.
Mr. Gregory, from now on you may call me Mona. Mona Kent.
So that's how Mona Kent came into being. A box of cigars and a gin bottle. I suppose in a way there is something symbolic about it.
Oh, I don't know. As far as I know, she doesn't smoke cigars.
I assume you consider that an asset in a girl?
No, not really. Not if she likes cigars.
Now, wait a minute, you fellas. There must have been something that you two liked about about Mona Kent.
Well, I liked her looks. And I liked her in the beginning.
And you, Eddie?
The way she moved. I still wanted to paint her. But there was something else. I guess you'd call it a strange sort of tenacity.
You mean like her determination to get where she was going?
No, not exactly. It was a different kind of determination. It was her ability to make other people assume the responsibility for what she did. Like Stephen Gregory's party, for example. The minute he asked her, she knew she was going, but then she made him sell her on the idea. And then even that wasn't enough.
Stephen Gregory's Long Island estate? Barbara, you'd be out of your mind not to go.
Yes, but Janice, how do I know it's all right? Anything could happen.
Well, just hope it does. Barbara, you can pass up a chance like this.
Yes, but Janice, I've never been to a weekend party before. I wouldn't know what to do or how to act.
I never had a chance like this. But if I did, well, I'd act the way they wanted me to act. I'd have done anything to get the start I needed.
Yes, but Janice, you...
Barbara, you've got to go. If you want to go anywhere in this business, you've got to be noticed.
Yes, but Janice, a weekend party at Stephen Gregory's. Who's going to notice me?
That's up to you, Barbara. Make them notice you. Do anything you can to make them notice you.
Well, she was just being a typical girl from the country asking her more experienced roommate for advice, right?
Look, you don't ask for advice when you already made up your mind what you're going to do.
But Janice could have changed her mind. Suppose she had suggested that Mona not go.
Well, if she had thought that there was a chance of that, but that's why she asked. She knew that Janice would push her into going, and Elvira Kowalski would be off the hook again.
I had a different idea about Mona. Maybe because I met her after she was Mona Kent. You see, I really never knew Elvira Kowalski.
So I understand. But you met her that summer on Long Island, didn't you?
Yeah, after Stephen Gregory's party.
But you weren't at the party, were you?
No, but the local papers gave it a pretty good coverage.
Well, the day of Stephen Gregory's party arrived, and so did Elvira Kowalski. He may have invited the new Mona Kent, but Elvira Kowalski showed up. It wasn't a lavish party, not by Long Island standards. There were only a few of Stephen's theatrical friends. But even with an easygoing crowd like this, it was easy to see Mona just didn't fit. Even a couple of young fellows that looked like they'd pay more than a little attention to any girl completely ignored her. Stephen was off somewhere at the time, and Mona just didn't know how to introduce herself. And no one there seemed to care much whether she did or not. They weren't deliberately rude, it was just that she looked and acted like some stray cat that wandered in off the street. Oh, she tried all right, but it just wasn't working out. Even the maid paid no attention to her. Perhaps if Stephen Gregory had been there, things would have been different. Or maybe he'd have acted like the rest of them after he got a look at her. Anyway, by the time he got back, Mona had taken matters into her own hands.
Now, don't worry, Elvira. It'll be a full house, and a few of them will be producers.
An actress has to use everything she has, even her body.
That's up to you, Barbara. Make them notice you. Do anything you can to make them notice you.
Your body is a commodity, and you have to use every means at your disposal to attract attention.
Well, I'd act the way they wanted me to act.
And I think it just might do you some good.
Very beautiful body's nothing to be ashamed of.
I'll do anything to get the start I needed.
When Mona got up, she knew what she was going to do. And in this act, she was going to be noticed. She was. Mona got the attention she wanted, all right, but in that brief moment, something else happened. Elvira Kowalski died. She took her first big step towards becoming the real Mona Kent.
Well, it created the splash that Mona needed, that's for sure.
But did she meet any producers?
Sure. It's met a guy from some local summer theater. You know the type, everything from producer to scenic artist.
So he put her to work. I suppose she started out, what, painting scenery?
No, she got a part right off the bat.
Well, how did she do, or didn't you see the show?
Oh, I caught the show. I met her while she was rehearsing for it.
For the next few weeks, Mona managed to spend a good bit of time with her producer, but her intentions were purely business. She was going to get somewhere in the theater, and he was the stepping stone that started her on her way. Of course, Stephen Gregory helped too. Not so much with the producer, but he let Mona use his house for the rest of the summer while he was in Europe. But even with all the comfort and convenience, Mona still had to work hard. She was really serious about her acting career, and she was determined she'd be ready for Broadway by the time the summer theater closed. She'd go over and over her script constantly, each line, each bit of stage business always striving for perfection. But with her lack of experience, some things came hard for her. Sometimes just a small bit of stage business would bog her down for most of the day. Often the only way she could work it out was to throw the whole thing off and get away for a while, forget it completely, and then come back to it later with a fresh, new approach. She developed a little ritual of her own to accomplish this. It was her own private theatrical superstition, but it was going to be a tough one to keep up on Broadway in the winter. That was the day Jerry Roberts first saw Mona Kent. He had just stopped in a store for some film. She was riding by when he came out. Obviously, someone else besides Eddie liked the way she moved. And Jerry, too, moved off after her. Jerry didn't know it then, but the couple of bucks he'd just spent for film was about to prove to be the best investment he'd ever made. When he started out, he'd planned to catch up to her. Then something made him change his mind. He just stayed a safe distance behind and kept following her. A short time later, that proved to be Jerry's second flash of intuitive genius that day. Well, didn't you want to meet her?
Well, I certainly did, and I intended to. But as I said, I had nothing else to do, and I was curious, you know, what she was up to.
Well, I take it then you did find out what she was up to.
Well, I sure did. I saw her ride out onto the beach, and I waited a while before following her.
Proving that patience is its own reward.
Anyway, Mona decided it was a deserted strip of beach, which it was, so in she went for a swim.
And, Jerry, what were you doing all this time?
Well, you know, I'm a photographer professionally, and I don't believe in wasting film. But with Mona in the surf and with my telephoto lens, I certainly wasn't wasting film.
Well, it's easy to see that, at least photographically speaking, Jerry's day was going to be a success. Those pictures had a lot to do with your current success in your field.
Well, no, not at least then. We became pretty friendly after that, and I promised her I wouldn't use them.
But you did take others, didn't you?
Oh, sure, I hung around out there all summer. I saw quite a bit of her, and actually we became pretty close. But she wasn't going to let me interfere with her career.
As the summer went on, with each show, Mona got better and better parts. Began to look as though her trip to the top was going to be a short, happy one. She was getting more experience with each part, and the work was getting easier for her. Broadway was getting closer. Of course, she knew that in one summer, she wouldn't get a starring role, but she could dream about it. During that time, Jerry was seeing a lot of Mona, as much as she'd let him. They'd either swim together, or he'd help her go over her lines. And now that he'd promised not to use the beach pictures, sometimes she was even downright friendly. Then this summer idyll was interrupted by what looked like Mona's big break. the one that really counted. The closing week, they were going to do a Broadway tryout and then come into New York for a fall opening.
Sure, the last show they did, she had a featured part. It's a Broadway tryout. It was slated to open in New York in the fall. I guess we all thought Mona was really on her way.
Well, what happened when the show opened on Broadway?
It didn't.
You mean it was that bad a show?
No, as a matter of fact, it wasn't bad at all.
Well, then what happened?
Well, Mona succumbed to outside influences again.
Only this time it was real.
3 or 4 days before the opening, strike.
The actor strike?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it certainly doesn't look like Mona Kent was living right, does it?
Well, you can look at it that way if you want to. Obviously, the strike wasn't Mona's fault, but it did give her a chance, as usual, to push the blame on somebody, well, in this case, something else.
Well, what about the reviews, or at least the pre-production stories? Did they have anything to say about her?
Yeah, most of them were very good, even though they weren't reviews.
Hey, Bara, did you see this? In Stephen Gregory's column. The show's failure to open on Broadway can hardly be considered a great loss to the theater. However, Broadway is going to miss the delicate and charming performance of a newcomer named Mona Kent as the wayward daughter.
Oh, Janice, you see, I was good. I am an actress.
Well, sure you are, honey, but with no show to do. Don't you think you ought to go back to the club? Just for a few weeks, maybe.
But Janice, with publicity like that, gosh, I can't afford to go back to being a hat-check girl. Can I?
I don't know, honey. Honestly, though, I think you...
That's Eddie. I asked him to come over.
Oh, great. He'll cheer you up for sure. I think I'll slip into something totally uncomfortable and take in a movie.
Oh, Janice, don't go. Eddie isn't that bad.
No, thanks. Oh, Eddie's all right, I guess. He's just not my type. And Vira, honey, he's not yours either.
Come on in, Eddie. Hi.
Where's the dragon?
You know, that's one thing about you two. You have very definite opinions about each other. She's dressing.
That's a switch. To go out?
Mm-hmm.
Good, then I'll stay.
Eddie, look what Stephen Gregory said about me. See? I was good. I got recognition. That means there'll be plenty of other things.
If I thought it would help spoil your evening, I'd stick around. But then it would spoil mine. Good night, Vira. See you after the house has been swept out.
Good night, Janice. With press notices like that, I won't have to worry.
This baby has one press notice. And there aren't going to be any more till you do something to attract attention.
Eddie, look. I came to New York to be a part of Broadway. And maybe I'll be an actress, and maybe I won't, but I will be a part of Broadway.
Look, it's a tough world, and you're trying to push your nose in the toughest part of it.
Eddie, I don't know if I want you. I know I want Broadway, though.
Oh, yeah, guts all right. But guts aren't enough. I don't care how you do it, but somehow you're going to have to let the world know that Elvira Kowalski is around.
Eddie, once and for all, Elvira Kowalski is dead. I am Mona Kent.
Sorry, I missed the funeral.
Eddie, you didn't. You helped to bury her and to help create Mona Kent.
You get the picture. Chief mourner and midwife all at the same time. Are you sure you're not just looking for someone to blame?
To blame? No.
The beautiful girls with high ideals and low intellects, confused principles, are always looking for someone to blame. And then you get sick.
Eddie, no.
Well, now, as I understand it, the next morning, Mona started making the rounds.
Yeah, for the next 5 weeks, she was in and out of every theatrical office in town at least a dozen times.
I don't suppose she always got the same answer.
No, but the results were always the same.
Yes, I know, Eddie. The routine. No casting today. She was either too early or too late or too young or too old. But Mona kept trying. In show business, there's no other way. Even if you are the right type, you have to be there at the right time. By this time, Mona had reached the end of her rope. There was no place for her to go and no way to get there. Right now, it seemed like the road back to Banksville was far shorter than the 1 mile to Broadway.
And a gala welcome home to the wandering thespian.
Oh, Janice, don't be so funny.
I'm sorry, Bara. Nothing today either?
No.
Oh, well, another day, another dollar spent for car fare.
Janice, I just don't know what I'm going to do. I just can't go on like this much longer.
Bara, honey, it's none of my business. But why don't you go back to the club?
No.
Wait a minute. First, you'll be seeing people. But more important, they'll be seeing you. People like Stephen Gregory.
Sure. They'll be seeing me as a hat check girl, not as an actress.
Listen, Bara, they won't be looking at you as anything except a woman.
Well, maybe you're right, but I just can't go back. And then I wouldn't have time to look for work.
Baby, if you don't go to work soon, you won't have anything but time. But as I said, it's none of my business.
I'm sorry, Janice. Maybe you're right. All right. Tomorrow I'll go back and see if I can get my job.
Okay, now let's go out and curl ourselves around a hamburger with onions. Well, if it isn't that nasty, bitter little man, what can we do for you that would hurt?
Oh, there's no need for you to be charming. Ladies, don't try.
Thanks. We're on our way out for a bite. I hope you don't plan to join us.
I wouldn't think of imposing. Why don't you just run along without us? I want to talk to Mona alone. And I brought just enough food for the two of us.
Well, I can't understand why, but I suppose she'll be willing. Tell her she can meet me at that little place on the corner, in case your charm fails to overwhelm her.
Oh, Mona, I came over to paint you.
Just like that?
Well, it has its practical aspects, too.
Like?
Oh, like it's already sold? Is that practical enough? Like I can pay you for posing, too?
Who said I can't go?
Okay, forget it. I just thought I could help out.
No. Eddie, please, wait a minute. Tell me more about it.
All right, I'll tell you. The other day, I showed this gallery some of my stuff. Some of my earlier stuff. And they liked it. Then I told them about you. Well, they said that if I could include your painting with it, then I could have a showing.
And you thought I'd go along?
Well, no, that depends. You Mona Kent or Elvira Kowalski? Which is it?
Eddie, which do you want it to be?
I couldn't care less. Mona Kent or Elvira Kowalski, professional or amateur. You play it your way.
The painting, I think it was, you certainly did have a lot of influence on her subsequent career.
You saw it?
Who hasn't?
Yeah, that was the one, all right. Then after that, Janice set off in another direction, which I guess in the end had even more effect. Mona went back to the club the next day.
Hey, Elvira.
Sam, it's not Elvira. It's Mona. Mona Kent.
Okay, so it's Mona. Anyway, Mr. Gregory wants cigarettes.
I didn't even see him come in.
Listen, kid, if you're smart, you'll push this Gregory bit. He can do you a lot of good, and he likes you.
I'm sorry, Sam. That's not the way I do things. Your cigarettes, Mr. Gregory?
Mona Kent. So you're back at last.
Yes.
It's been a long time.
Not really, Mr. Gregory. It just seems that way.
You or to me?
Well, I've been very busy.
In the theater, I suppose.
Yes, I've been. Well, not exactly in the theater. Mostly outside trying to get in.
And you gave up and came back here?
No. This is only temporary, Mr. Gregory.
Jerry, weren't you around while all this was going on?
No, not at least for a few days in the beginning. I was out of town on another assignment, and when I got back into town, I spent almost another week lining up another job. The big one, I thought.
Well, then it was quite a while before you actually saw Mona again.
No, only a week or two. If it worked out, she was going to have to be part of this deal I was working on.
Just a minute. I'm coming. Come on in.
Hey, Mona, baby, I got it! Last I got it!
What have you got, my cold?
Oh, seriously, the answer. The thing that'll make me hit the big time. Hey, and you too.
What is this big, bright idea?
Well, you know the summer festival in New York is every year. The flags, big doings, advertising, the whole bit.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, today I made a deal. I'm gonna do a picture story on it. Cover the whole thing.
Oh, Jerry, that's marvelous. That's wonderful.
There's only one thing, Mona. I showed him some of your pictures. The ones I took of you rehearsing, Summer Theater Girl and all that. Well, I had to promise you'd do it.
Jerry, it's just impossible. I'm working at the club every night. And I'm posing for Eddie every day, and there's just no time.
Mona, this means so much to both of us. Eddie's just trying to cash in on your body. He really doesn't care about you.
Do you, Jerry?
Mona, of course I do. Please, honey, you've just got to do it.
All right. I'll do it.
We'll get started first thing. Think you're ready by 8?
8? In the morning?
Sure. We got a lot of ground to cover.
I overheard what went on. I couldn't help it. Barry, you're out of your mind if you do it. Maybe you figured out when you're going to sleep.
I haven't really given it very much thought.
Obviously. Barbara, what are you getting yourself into? Do you think these two guys are really going to do you any good?
Janice, I don't know. I just don't know.
Well, Stephen Gregory's interested in you, isn't he?
I guess so. I really don't know.
Well, if I were you, I'd find out.
Janice, he's so much older.
When Jerry and Mona started out on their picture-taking expedition the next day, I guess neither of them realized what they'd taken on. Certainly New York is a confined place. Manhattan Island is only 12 miles long and 3 miles at its widest. On the surface, the job seems simple enough, but there's an awful lot crammed into that tight little area, as they soon found out. Jerry planned to complete the job in something less than a week. It finally wound up taking them much longer, but they did manage to cover everything. Probably because animals and girls have so much in common and make such a colorful combination, Jerry started out at the zoo in Central Park. From there, they went uptown to the Cloisters, an old authentic Spanish monastery on the northernmost tip of Manhattan Island. They finished up the first day in front of Mona's apartment just as a troop of mounted police went by. The second day, they covered as much of the waterfront and as many of the bridges as they could. As the days continued to mount, they covered more and more of the city. They tried as much as possible to get a true cross-section of the city, its churches, the biggest buildings, even some of the many examples of outstanding new dramatic architecture, monuments of glass and chrome and stone. They were learning that New York was a beautiful city when you got close enough to it. And Jerry was beginning to feel the same way about Mona. But even in her warm moments, there was something about her that held Jerry off. Mona's every act was as though she were on a stage. Every movement was for an audience. But except for this, Jerry had no complaints. Mona was a good trooper, and she worked hard. And walked hard, too. Before they finished, Mona had walked her way through a new pair of shoes. Then they finished the UN and completed the tour with the ice skating at Rockefeller Center. And some shots around St. Patrick's Cathedral just across the street. By the time the sun set on that final day, both Jerry and Mona were ready to quit.
But no matter how hard we worked, I was sorry to see those 10 days come to an end.
Why?
Well, because it would bring to an end the intimacy between me.
But you wanted it to continue, didn't you, Jerry?
Yeah, I did, but it didn't. It was my fault.
Oh, come on, Jerry. It was no more your fault what happened than what I did.
Well, then you did. Boy, that's a laugh. Nobody had more to do with it than you.
All right, gentlemen, please, please.
Oh, come on, don't worry about it. We go through this quite often just so we don't forget who Mona Kent is, or who we are.
And how we got here.
Evening, Mona.
Good evening, Mr. Gregory.
Say, you're looking tired. Your hard work beginning to get you down?
Well, I guess I haven't been getting very much sleep lately, but it'll soon be over. I finished the picture story yesterday, and, well, the painting should be finished this week.
And back to normal, eh?
If you call this normal.
Mona, you still want the theater, don't you?
Mr. Gregory, that's all I want.
How badly?
Well, I'd do anything. Absolutely anything.
Anything? Are you sure? For instance, would you marry me?
Mr. Gregory, can't you ever be serious about anything?
Well, I usually find it difficult, Mona, but sometimes... Oh, well, perhaps a drink will help. Sam.
And while all this was going on, Eddie, you were still painting Mona.
Oh, yes. I hadn't quite finished, but I didn't need Mona around just occasionally. As a matter of fact, during that time, I was seeing quite a bit of Janice.
Well, in view of your relationship, that must have been rather pleasant for both of you.
We settled our differences, being together like we were.
I take it that you two worked out some sort of a truce then, huh?
You might call it that, yes.
Eddie tells me the painting's going to be finished today.
Today?
That's what he said.
You've been seeing a lot of Eddie lately, haven't you?
Well, he's been around, painting.
I thought you didn't like him.
But I don't. That is, I didn't. But watching him paint you, well, I changed, that's all.
Of course. Would you like to tell me about it?
There's nothing to tell. Well, oh, yes, there is, Vara, and I don't know how to say it. Vara, we're going to be married.
I see. I understand. Well, he should finish the painting tonight, then.
I think I'll run along now. You don't mind, do you?
No, I just thought you'd like to stay and see it finished. The painting, of course.
Oh, I'll see it later on. Eddie works so much better with you when you're alone. Don't you think?
Does he?
Yes, I guess you did work out something of a truce, at least with Janice. But tell me, Eddie, how did things come off with you and Mona, or for that matter, with Janice and Mona?
Well, at first it seemed all right, but at that time, Mona couldn't care less about me.
Oh, Jerry, you were back in the picture?
Yeah, I guess so. I had been around for a few days, but the day Eddie finished the picture, I had finished the proofs. Well, Mona asked me to bring them up. She wanted me to see the finished painting before Eddie took it.
Oh, then you hadn't seen the painting. I mean, while Eddie...
No. Mona wanted me to wait until it was finished.
Mm-hmm. Eddie, what about that last day with you? You know, the day that you finished. Did you and Mona get along all right?
Sure. Yeah, fine.
Mona didn't even mention anything about you and Janice getting married?
Well, not while we were working, but after we were done, she mentioned it. Briefly. There it is. It's all finished.
Oh, Eddie, it's lovely.
Mona, it had to be. It's you.
Eddie, no. Eddie, don't. Eddie, stop. You're going to be married.
Sure we are. Not tonight.
Oh, Eddie, don't. No. Jerry, come in.
Jerry.
Hi.
Well, look, kids, I gotta run along.
Hey, where you going? Want to tell me about the painting? Congratulations.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Is that it?
No, this is another one.
Oh, Eddie. It's beautiful. Please let Jerry see it.
Sure, let's have a look at it. Mona. Mona, it's you. A nude of you.
Yes. I thought you knew.
Yeah, well, I gotta run along. I'm a little late.
Mona, what does this mean? That painting, you let him sell it?
Well, of course it's a work of art. It's for an exhibition.
Well, I know who bought it. It's no art gallery. Betty can use that picture of you. I'm going to use those I took that first day at the beach.
But, Jerry, you wouldn't. You couldn't.
Oh, you're damn right I wouldn't. You gave me permission. You signed the release for me to make these. You can keep that batch of overdressed trash. I could have sold the others a dozen times. I could have been on top of the heap by now if you let me. But no. You were an actress. You couldn't keep in yourself.
Jerry, you don't understand. Eddie's painting is different. It's one painting for a few art lovers. Please try and understand.
Oh, now, wait a minute, Mona. You better understand. Oh, you'll have a few art lovers, all right. That painting's going to do a lot more than hang in a gallery. It'll be in every gas station, every garage, every pool hall, warehouse, barracks.
What do you mean?
I mean, your friend Eddie sold that picture to an art calendar company. And next year, you're going to be at every calendar in 50 states.
Oh, no. Eddie couldn't have. Janice wouldn't let him.
Yeah? Well, they did, together. Where do you think they're getting the money to be married? And if Eddie's going to get it by cashing in your butt, so am I, with these.
Jerry, no!
Eddie, I'd like to ask you a personal question, if I may.
Well, sure, go ahead.
It's about that final pass that you made at Mona.
I was afraid of that. I honestly don't know why. Maybe seeing her with her clothes off for so long sort of bugged me when I saw her with her clothes on. Honestly, I really don't know.
Well, you must have thought about Janice. What about her?
For a moment, I thought I wanted Mona all the time. And I guess I did. But when I got out of there, I got over it.
You sure it wasn't because you knew what you were doing to her, with the painting, I mean?
Doing to her? That painting went a long way making Mona Kent what she is today.
Hey, now, wait a minute. I'd like to think my pictures contributed something.
You know, I don't understand you two fellas. You both seem to be proud of what you did to Mona Kent. I was under the impression of you rather than thank you.
Well, that was her attitude from the beginning. Always.
You, Eddie, and you too, Jerry. Now, it seems to me that both of you pushed yourselves ahead on her pictures.
That's right. We pushed her into a kind of reality about herself. Probably she didn't want to use her body the way Jerry and I were using it. But we made her realize that one way or the other, she was going to have to use it.
But that wasn't what she wanted.
Well, Mona Kent didn't know what she wanted at first. Eddie and I crystallized it for her. Then when it came down the wire, we found ourselves priced out of the market.
Are you sure it wasn't because she was mad at all of you?
Could be. Could be. Maybe she had her to be too. But Mona was much madder at herself, not for what she had done or for what Jerry and I had done to her. She was mad at herself for what she had not done to herself.
Well, now, would you unscramble that for us, Eddie, and tell us what hadn't she done?
Until that day, she hadn't decided, all things considered, who would be the highest bidder and what the traffic would bear. So she set out to find out.
I thought you'd gone.
I'm sure you did.
I only thought...
I know what you thought. Enjoy your wedding present.
Mona had finally made her decision. Oh, she was going to use her body all right, but not the way others thought. She had a plan, and she knew it would work. Mona Kent was changing again. Not back to Elvira Kowalski, too much had happened for that, but into a harder, more brittle Mona Kent, determined to move herself beyond the possibility of being hurt. And she knew of one way to do it.
Ready for another drink, Mr. Gregory?
No, no thanks, Sam. I have an appointment. You might say with this in it.
Mona drove hard and fast, but not without purpose. She had her ritual in mind. She was going back to a starting point, real or fancy. It was something Mona felt she had to do. A compulsion that would erase everything that had happened. Erasing things of the past is, of course, a mental process. But Mona needed a physical manifestation. This was her way of washing away the past, making herself clean, new, completely fresh for Stephen. It never... Mona... What he didn't know for sure was how much she was willing to give to get it. He was about to find out. Well, Mona Kent made her deal. Stephen Gregory gave her Broadway, gave her a big, brightly lighted niche in the square-mile pinnacle of light bulbs and people. But he gave her something else. To him, something of even greater value. To her, who knows? In tonight's world of the theater, only time will tell which role is the real one.